Stevie J, the Usher part, that's a touchy situation, man.
They once worked together a long time ago. They're not friends now. They don't like each other. And yeah, 50 has taken every shot, especially when Diddy has been down.
Sean Combs' own camera crew ended up giving his enemies the exact evidence they needed to take him down for good. And the footage captured during the final 6 days before his arrest isn't just incriminating. It lays out the entire path to his downfall. People thought the raids, the court cases, even the prison sentence were the conclusion of it all. But then his lawyers' frantic cease and desist letters exposed something bigger. The most damaging evidence wasn't taken by the FBI. It was leaked by someone from within his inner circle, someone who knew all his secrets. Now, sources connected to the Netflix documentary are confirming that the hotel room recordings, where Combs can be heard planning questionable activities with his team, weren't stolen. They were intentionally released at the exact moment his son suddenly announced his own tell-all project. Legal experts are calling it either a desperate last attempt to regain control or a massive strategic mistake.
With the series, with the film?
I mean, I think the intention is to give a more full-bodied experience to what happened, you know, from the people that agreed to sit down and to participate. And I feel like the film asks a lot of questions, you know, maybe more questions are asked than answers given.
And the numbers don't lie. 22 million views in just 6 days for The Reckoning, a 50-month prison sentence beginning in October 2025, and a $500,000 fine. That's only the start of the financial damage. Still, his team continues to shout about stolen footage, while his eldest son is dealing with his own lawsuit over allegations that reflect his father's most serious accusations. What doesn't make sense is the timing. Why would Combs, a man known for tightly controlling his narrative, keep the cameras rolling after the raids unless he was filming for someone other than the authorities? And why would his sons put themselves at legal risk to defend someone whose reputation has become so damaging it could affect their own futures? The real story here isn't just the documentary, the lawsuits, or even the prison sentence. It's that someone ensured Combs' own habit of recording everything became the very thing that trapped him. And if another leak happens with the same precision, the consequences won't stop with him. The footage that destroyed the last of Sean Combs' control wasn't captured by hidden cameras. It came from his own production team turning against him. And the timing of its release isn't just suspicious, it's calculated. The recordings, filmed in a New York hotel room during the 6 days leading up to his September 2024 arrest, show what his legal team describes as private strategy discussions. But insiders describe something very different. A man falling apart, quietly telling his lawyers he was losing control of a situation that had already slipped beyond his usual confidence. Cease and desist letters were sent out immediately, with his representatives claiming theft and unlawful access. But Netflix responded firmly, stating the material was obtained legally. The documentary's director, Alexandria Stapleton, didn't come across it by chance. She said she went to extreme lengths to protect the source. That's where things start to shift, because Combs wasn't just any public figure. He was someone who spent years documenting his own life, from reality shows to behind-the-scenes footage, as if he believed the camera would always work in his favor. But this time, it became a liability. The unanswered question is who within his inner circle decided to expose him. What people are now discussing isn't just what's in the recordings. It's the fact that Combs kept filming even after the Department of Homeland Security raided his homes in March 2024. Even as lawsuits kept piling up, those close to him say he believed he could still control the story, that his version would always prevail. But the hotel footage suggests otherwise. In one clip, he can be heard saying, "We're losing," his voice tense, far from his usual confidence, sounding closer to panic. His lawyers tried to stop the release before the documentary aired, calling it a targeted attack. But it was already too late. The footage had been released, and the man who built his empire on controlling his image was now facing something he couldn't shape: raw, unfiltered evidence of his own fear. And this is where it becomes even more confusing. If Combs truly believed the recordings were stolen, why didn't he push for an investigation into who leaked them? Why focus on Netflix instead of the individual who provided the footage? The silence on that question speaks louder than anything shown in the documentary itself.
I think it was surprising that he actually filmed it.
Yeah, and I want to ask about that because how did you go about getting the footage? And do you know the intent of the videographer, why he or this person took the footage?
She's a journalist, right?
Yeah.
So she's not going to reveal her sources, so you don't have to reveal that.
The documentary's release on December 2nd, 2025 wasn't just a cultural moment. It was a calculated strike, and the numbers make that clear. 22 million views in just 6 days, a rapid surge that made it Netflix's most-watched title almost overnight, and a $500,000 fine that suddenly seemed minor compared to the reputational damage. But the real signal is in the timing. The Combs family announced their own documentary series only weeks later, a move industry veterans are calling either a desperate counterattack or a serious strategic error. Their trailer, released without warning on social media, shows Justin and Christian Combs watching trial footage in stunned silence, their expressions a mix of defiance and something closer to fear. The issue is that both sons are already dealing with legal trouble of their own. Justin is facing a lawsuit over allegations of luring a woman to Los Angeles under false pretenses in 2017, while Christian has been accused of assault on a yacht in 2022. Meanwhile, their father's legal team continues to insist the Netflix footage was obtained illegally. That contradiction is where pressure starts to build. Because if the Combs sons are trying to clear the record, why are they using the same trial clips their father's lawyers call stolen? And why would they risk reopening cases that could pull them deeper into the legal chaos surrounding their father? The answers may lie in the 3 moves Curtis Jackson, known as 50 Cent, claims he made long before the documentary aired. In interviews, he has been direct. This wasn't just about exposing Combs, it was about making sure he couldn't recover. The first move, according to sources close to the production, was funding legal support for 7 of Combs' accusers, giving them stronger representation in court. The second was quietly securing rights to potential post-prison business deals Combs had lined up, including endorsements and media projects, effectively cutting off future income streams. But it's the third claim that has people talking. That 50 Cent has been holding on to a large archive of evidence, testimonies, and recordings spanning 2 decades, waiting for the right moment to release it. And that moment, according to the narrative, wasn't the raids or the arrest. It was when Combs' sons decided to respond with their own documentary. That's not being framed as coincidence. It's being described as a setup. And according to that version of events, the Combs family may have stepped directly into it.
People know about this very public, long-standing feud that you've had with Sean Combs. So what brought you to this project?
Well, I just want to make really hit television. I like the idea of it being exciting, and I picked this project and started working on it about 5 months before I found Alex. And I know that she has the artistic integrity that it would take to make it.
What makes this more than just a feud between 2 rap moguls is the way 50's strategy doesn't only target Combs, it dismantles the entire system that once protected him. The Netflix documentary isn't simply a hit piece. It's a carefully built narrative that doesn't just accuse Combs of wrongdoing, but also pulls in an entire industry tied to his rise and fall. The footage of Combs in that hotel room is not only damaging because of what he says, but because of who is present with him, who is speaking to him on calls, and who is still refusing to publicly explain what they witnessed. And that's where the real risk appears. Because if 50's approach succeeds, it won't only leave Combs exposed, it will expose everyone who stayed silent, everyone who attended those infamous white parties, and everyone who benefited from that silence. The documentary's director, Stapleton, described it as a mirror for the public, but the reflection is not only about Combs. It's also about who is still watching from the shadows, waiting, and wondering if they will be next. The Combs Sons documentary, set to release on the Zeus network in 2026, is not just a response to their father's downfall. It's a gamble that could either restore their family name or further damage it. Legal analysts are already highlighting the risks. If their version of events contradicts their father's legal defense, it could weaken his appeal. If they acknowledge awareness of his behavior, it could open them up to additional lawsuits. And if they attempt to portray their father as a victim, They will still have to address why so many people, from Cassie Ventura to an unnamed security guard who alleges assault at a white party, have made claims that sound strikingly similar. The trailer promises truth, but the real question is whose truth is being told, and whether they are prepared for the consequences if it doesn't match the legal record. Because at this point, the only certainty is that their father's legacy is heavily damaged, their own legal issues are growing, and 50 Cent appears to still be several steps ahead. And then there is the issue of the white parties. These events, for years, were considered the most exclusive gatherings in Hollywood, where major celebrities like Jennifer Lopez, Jay-Z, and Beyoncé were seen alongside powerful industry figures in an environment described as glamorous on the surface, but according to multiple lawsuits, deeply troubling beneath it. Held annually from 1998 to 2009, the parties became known for their all-white dress code, their excess, and the way Combs allegedly blurred the line between business and what one lawsuit refers to as a rite of passage for young aspiring talent. The allegations are serious. A 16-year-old claims Combs examined him in a private room as a test of industry commitment. A former adult film performer describes being drawn into a pattern of exploitation, and a security guard alleges he was drugged and assaulted after being taken to a private area. But what is being discussed now is not only the accusations, it is the lack of public denial from those who attended. No statements from celebrities present at the events, no clarification from sponsors, only silence. And in an industry built on image, silence is not neutral. It is interpreted as complicity. What makes it more complex is that Combs reportedly documented these gatherings like everything else in his life. Photographs show him surrounded by some of the biggest names in entertainment, arms around figures who now avoid any association with him. But according to claims and lawsuits, the documentation may have gone beyond just the public moments. It may have included what happened before and after the parties, when the music stopped and private interactions allegedly began. If the documentary team linked to 50 Cent has access to any such material that has never been released before, the impact would extend far beyond Combs himself. It would implicate everyone who attended, everyone who posed for those photos, and everyone who later chose silence. The central question is no longer only what Combs is accused of doing, but who enabled it, who ignored it, and who continues to protect themselves by remaining quiet.
Interestingly, we haven't seen the indictments yet. There's been some time lag. I suppose it will take some time to go through all the forensic, evidence.
But the most unsettling part of this isn't the past, it's the present. Right now, while the Combs family scrambles to protect their reputation, while 50 Cent's team prepares for the next phase, and while the industry waits in silence, one name keeps coming up in conversations that are not on record: Justin Bieber. The pop star's link to Combs has often been treated as a minor detail, just a teenage Bieber spending time with a powerful figure, receiving gifts, and being told not to discuss certain moments. But the specifics are what make it harder to ignore. In 2011, on Jimmy Kimmel Live, Combs joked that Bieber had spent 48 hours with him, that they had done things they couldn't talk about, and that Bieber knew better than to discuss what he did with Big Brother Puff. At the time, it was brushed off as a playful, late-night TV moment, typical entertainment humor. But in the current context, it reads differently, almost like a warning. And when you add the fact that Bieber unfollowed not only Combs but also members of his wider circle, including Usher, his former mentor, after the raids, it raises more questions than answers. The question is no longer just what happened during those 48 hours, but what Bieber may know that he has never spoken about publicly.
He got on Shay Shay and he mentioned how great and how good Puff taught him and everything.
What's being overlooked in the rush to dissect Combs' downfall is how this all ties back to Usher, the man who was once Combs' protege and is now, in the eyes of many, his most significant living witness. Usher has spoken openly about living with Combs at 13, describing an environment where he witnessed things no teenager should have been exposed to. He has called the experience wild, mentioned orgies occurring in nearby rooms, and even told Howard Stern that he would never send his own children to what he referred to as Puffy Camp. And yet, in 2024, he allowed Bieber, then a 15-year-old rising star, to spend 48 hours with Combs during a now infamous encounter. The contradiction is difficult to ignore. A man who says he was disturbed by what he saw as a teen later placing the next generation of stars in a similar environment raises serious questions. And that is before considering that Usher has never fully explained why his relationship with Bieber changed so abruptly or what discussions took place behind closed doors. In an industry where silence is often part of the code, that silence itself becomes part of the story. It doesn't just protect those accused, it also shields those who may have been close enough to see what was happening. Right now, Usher's name is being mentioned in the same conversations as Combs. Not as a direct target, but as someone who may have understood more than he has ever publicly admitted. The documentary's release has triggered a broader reckoning, but not one that leads to clear answers. Instead, it creates more uncertainty, raising questions about how deep the situation truly goes. Because if Combs' own sons are struggling to defend him, if 50 Cent's strategy is built around long-held evidence, and if major figures in the industry remain silent, then the story is no longer just about one man's collapse. It becomes about a system that continues to function, continues to protect itself, and continues to keep certain truths out of view. The Combs family documentary may promise clarity, but truth becomes complicated when it comes from people with their own stakes in the outcome. And if future leaks emerge with the same level of precision, the consequences may extend far beyond Combs alone, reaching everyone who was ever close enough to see and chose not to speak.
His independence to then becoming Puff Daddy, you know what I'm saying? And I got a front row seat looking at that.
The deeper you dig into Sean's collapse, the clearer it becomes that this isn't just about one man's downfall. It's about the machinery that kept him untouchable for decades, and how that same machinery is now turning in on itself. The white parties weren't just lavish gatherings. They were the center of an entire system where access, power, and silence were the real currency. And the most disturbing part isn't only what allegedly happened inside those rooms, it's how the industry's biggest names still refuse to address it. Jennifer Lopez, Jay-Z, Beyoncé, they were all present, smiling for photos and lending their star power to events that are now tied to multiple lawsuits involving claims ranging from coercion to exploitation. The pattern is hard to ignore. A 16-year-old boy alleges he was forced into a rite of passage involving humiliation and control. A security guard claims he was drugged and assaulted after being led into a private area. A former adult film performer describes being drawn into what she calls a cycle of manipulation. And yet, the only voices speaking out are those already pushed to the margins. The A-listers remain silent. That silence is not coincidence. It's how the system protects itself when the stakes are high. What's becoming increasingly clear is that Combs didn't operate in isolation. He was the most visible figure in a wider network that thrived on the same dynamics. The real question is not just what he did, but who enabled it, who benefited from it, and who is still protecting their own interests by staying quiet. The documentary's release has forced attention on the issue, but the industry's response has been controlled silence. No statements, no denials, just a quiet attempt to move on, as if decades of allegations don't exist. But the past still matters, because the same structures that once protected Combs are still in place, and many of the same people remain in positions of influence. The Combs Sons documentary may promise transparency, but transparency is not necessarily the goal. Survival is. And if major figures in the industry continue refusing to address what happened at those parties, it is not because they are unaware, but because speaking out carries consequences. The most troubling aspect of this entire situation is not just the footage, the lawsuits, or the legal outcomes. It's how consistently the story returns to the same unanswered questions. Why did Usher, who has spoken about witnessing disturbing behavior as a teenager, later allow Justin Bieber to spend 48 hours with Combs? Why did Bieber later unfollow Combs, Usher, and others connected to him after the raids? And why has no high-profile attendee of those white parties publicly denied the allegations or directly addressed them? The silence is not accidental, it is strategic. In an industry built on image and access, the greatest risk is not simply wrongdoing, but exposure and discussion. And at this point, the only people willing to speak are those who have already been pushed out or have nothing left to lose.